This is a reader Q&A from amarastrand.com. I'm going to summarize the question, but the question is very detailed and nuanced, and you will get the most out of this if you actually read it, and I'm going to put it in its full form in the description below. So if you want to pause right now and go ahead and read that, you'll understand what I'm talking about a lot more. So I'm going to call the reader Diane. That's not her name, of course, because this is always anonymous, but I like having something to refer to. So we'll call her Diane. And this is basically what her situation is. Last summer, she went to Peru and she sought out a shaman and she did ayahuasca. So she did an ayahuasca ceremony. And when she returned, well, all hell broke loose and it really kind of upended her life. The way she thinks of this is that she's had a Kundalini activation or awakening, and this has caused her to, as you know, you've probably read a lot of things about Kundalini awakenings and how disruptive they can be. They can cause you to become very disassociated from your body, from your feelings. It's just really hard to do the status quo, life as usual. And if you're a mom, if you run a business, if you, have a career and you have a marriage, these are all things in your life that depend on you pretty much being the same relatively day after day after day. And so when you have something like a Kundalini awakening or what you experience that way, you're not that person, right? You can't show up necessarily as that same person and have that kind of continuity as you're going through some of these massive changes. So that has been really difficult for her, and it's finally started to settle down a little bit. It's not quite so extreme, and now she's worried because of course, her husband wants to be intimate, right? Sexually intimate. And she's been holding back because she's afraid that if she has sex, this is going to reignite that Kundalini that's finally kind of settled down, finally giving her a little bit of space to just get her feet on the ground, and that it's going to turn that all upside down again. It's going to reactivate and she's going to turn into a weirdo again, right? So this is the fear, and the relationship is tenuous because of course she's been, having these issues for months now, and it's been difficult for her marriage just having those issues. And now she's been withholding sex, and that's, that's always a really tricky thing to have happen in a relationship. And so that's the gist of it. It's a lot more nuanced than that, so please do, go down in the description, just go ahead and read the whole thing. But I'm going to jump right into it. So Diane, wow, you've got a lot going on and it can seem like all these moving parts, but let me just break it down for you. It's not actually about your Kundalini, okay? I'm going to get to that. We're going to talk about sex and Kundalini, but I want you to know that that's 20% of the issue. And the 80% of the issue is actually not spiritual, it's not exotic, it's not any of those things. It is just plain old relational stuff, marital stuff. It is a call for you to see where you are not mature in your marriage. There is a way that you are in this marriage, in relationship, where you are not comfortable, you haven't reached that level of maturity, and I don't mean that as an age thing, it has nothing to do with age, okay? But that level of development where you can take up space and you can own your own experience even if you don't understand it fully, because honestly, who does? When you're going through anything difficult, whether it's Kundalini, which is very dramatic and exotic and, it sounds like it should be exceptional in another category, but frankly, when you're going through any of the big changes that life brings you, and you are in a marriage with this man, so that means you're in it for life. And so during that process of being in it for life, life is going to bring you all sorts of really dramatic changes, and they're not neat and tidy, and they're not things that you can come forward and say, well, yeah, things have been difficult, and let me explain it exactly neat and tidy to you so that you understand it. You are in process, and that's okay, regardless of what put you in that process. this is from Kundalini awakening or whatever it happens to be. Yes, that's what it's from. But really, the reason you're having this problem in your marriage is because you're not communicating. There's absolutely no reason for it to have come this far because, as you said, my relationship's on the line, which means that this didn't just happen yesterday. This has been a process where there is a breakdown in communication. And again, you might think, well, I'm having trouble communicating this thing that I don't understand, and that's not what it is. It's okay. It's okay to not really fully understand what's happening to you and still be okay with yourself. As messy as you are, as in process as you are, to be able to say to your husband, this is what's happening to me. And I don't fully understand it, but this is what it feels like to me. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm uncertain about. This is what I'm afraid of. And I love you. And I value you being here with me. And I know how hard it is for you, how hard it has been for you. But stay with me, Stay with me through this process. And I promise on my part, I'll communicate with you as I go, that I will also try to understand how you are doing through this process as we go through this together. So that is more of like the mature relationship. That's what's going to get your marriage, any marriage, through the many just messy, ridiculous change factors that happen in life. If you live long enough and you're married long enough, you're going to come up with all sorts of things. And some of those things are also going to cause you to have sexual problems, right? That's a really common issue between married people anyways. So to be able to talk about those things as you process them and do that in a way where you don't have to be apologetic. I mean, in a sense, there's not a willingness on your part, not a comfort on your part to just own your own space and say, this is my experience. And it's not in a defensive way. It's not in a forcing it on somebody way. It's not even in a way of being certain what that experience is. You only know what's happening to you as it's happening to you. If he can hear that you're doing the best you can, that you are open and communicating, and you're not running into a corner and just trying to process this on your own and leaving him to kind of just be alone in a sense. It feels a little bit about like you just disappeared off the screen, and it's really hard in a marriage when one person kind of disappears off the screen without saying, you know what, I don't know what's happening to me. It feels like this, it seems like this. I know it's hard for you. I'm going to need to disappear off the screen for a little bit, but I'll be back because I love you and this marriage is important to me. Bear with me. I'll be back, So this is the communication. And so there are communication skills you need to learn, but the really big thing there too is that I really get a sense from you that you are not ready to own your own experience. Your father-in-law is, as you said, something like a hardcore psychiatrist. So you've been diagnosed in a sense, right? But the thing is, this is another part of that not owning your own space and experience. You're not married to your father-in-law, and your husband is not his father, right? So your father-in-law may have any opinion of you and your experience as he wishes, and that's fine. But he's not part of that marriage. He's not part of your marriage. He's not part of this equation. So the fact that he even has that much of a bearing that you would mention it is also indicative of two people, you and your husband, who are not just saying, this is us, right? It's you and me. We're going to figure things out together. We're going to keep talking. Even if it makes no sense, even if we're confused, we're going to keep talking. We're going to keep these things open. We're going to try the best we can to communicate, to describe and explain, and to process together. Diane, is it that you don't feel you have a right to your own experience? That you need to give weight and reference to people who are not even in your marriage to weigh in on an experience as personal as the one that you describe, which you believe that it's Kundalini awakening, and someone else is opining that you are depressed, that you are psychotic. And by the way, this is maybe a separate subject here, but I'm just going to say this. What makes you think that you are not depressed and psychotic? Just sit with that for a minute. And I want everyone to just sit with that for a minute. What makes you think that you cannot be depressed and psychotic, or that it's this thing of it's either Kundalini awakening or I'm having some kind of mental health issue? Is it either or? Why do we even think that? Like, where did that assumption come from? Because I've actually seen the two things happen together. I have seen people become psychotic and fully manic and euphoric, but manic, and then depressed after taking ayahuasca. And they also had Kundalini activated. So both of these things can happen at the same time. And even though, like, to me, your father-in-law really shouldn't be a huge factor. If you want medical advice, your father-in-law is not the person. If you want advice from a mental health professional, that's not his job. And he knows that, actually, that it's not his job. You go seek that from, someone who's not involved with you. It's really important. But the thing is, to even think that these two things can't happen together, it's either or, like the true mark of like security and sanity, in fact, in a sense, is being willing to look equally at all your options and not fearing them, just looking at them dispassionately and saying, well, it seems like Kundalini, and maybe also that has triggered psychosis or depression or whatever it is. So it doesn't necessarily need to be either or. It can be both at the same time. So I'm just going to put that there for you to really think about. And everyone else who's listening, I think it's super important, because I don't know why there is this absolute unfounded assumption that either you're having a psychotic break or you are, or like, some other thing, disassociation, whatever, all these different psychiatric terms, or you're having a spiritual experience, because they can happen at the same time. So putting that aside, I'd really like you to take a moment. I know it seems like, oh my God, my relationship is on the brink and I need to solve this sex thing right away. But the real problem is the communication and the maturity, and you growing up and into yourself as an adult, growing into your adult self, because there's something there that comes from childhood that says, I'm not allowed to have this experience. I'm not allowed to fully inhabit this experience and be confused and be excited and be uncertain and be scared. I'm not allowed to own all of that and communicate all of that. I'm not allowed, and I can't take up that much space. I can't take up my own space in my own experience. That's really the problem. All of this stuff with Kundalini, you know what it's doing? It could have been anything. It could have been something else, okay? What it's doing is it's stressing this part of your relationship to the breaking point. And so you get to see the things that don't work. Unless everything is perfect and, everything's going super smoothly, and then you can kind of fake it. You can kind of, paste over the cracks, but now you can't really paste over those cracks because the cracks are way too big. So it is showing up the place where you haven't grown into yourself as an adult, as a woman who can, even in her confusion and fear, because you're feeling a lot of those two things right now, even in that space where you say, this thing is happening and I don't really know what to do with it. I don't know how to process it. I don't know what this means. Even in that space, to have the strength to be able to say that out loud to the right person and not feel like you have to defend yourself or justify yourself or explain things that you can't right now even explain. And that you can communicate those things with that kind of strength that comes from being okay, owning all of this experience, and at the same time being strong enough to also comfort and bring out the best in your partner. So if you're having this completely strange experience that is just causing you to be in a tailspin, you don't know what's going on, everything is upside down, you're not yourself, and your spouse is just sort of at a bit of a distance watching this, then he's going to be really scared too, and resentful, and, confused, and a lot of things that he's going to feel. And so in your strength of even owning your experience and owning the fact that you don't understand it and you are afraid to, but being able to take up that much space, your own space, live in your experience enough and be mature enough to talk to him as much as you need to share these things that are appropriate to share, and also continuously remind him that he's important to you, that your marriage is important to you, and that him being there for you while you process this stuff, and that it's not going to be forever, is important to you, and that his friendship, his solidarity, being your family, your soul partner, the father of your child, this is important to you and valuable to you. So even in that place where it's like, I'm confused, I'm scared, I'm kind of like going off the rails here, but I still love and value you, and I will be back. I don't know what form I'll be back in, because I'm sure you're wondering right now, what am I going to come back as? Life causes you to change. This is just it. So I'm sorry, when you married, your promise wasn't, I'll be the exact same person the day I die or the day you die as I am today, or at least the person I become will be like an obvious progression from this person that I am. No, life is super messy, especially for people who do shit like going off to Peru and doing ayahuasca. Come on, you've got to own that, right? It's not like, oh my God, I'm just, I'm going to go do that, and then I'm going to come back and I'll be, the same or a little better or a little freer. You open the door to things. Obviously, you're an adventurer and a risk taker. And so you can't, like, on one hand, be the super adventurer and risk taker, and then on the other hand, not take the consequences of that, which means that you or he or both of you might change radically. I mean, you went to do this thing, I assume, not to, incur some sort of incremental, barely noticeable change. Most people who do ayahuasca ceremonies and go down to Peru to do that are looking for like a deep, dramatic, sudden kind of change. Otherwise, you would just, go to psychotherapy or something. You are married to somebody who has done ayahuasca. So if he's done ayahuasca, I assume that he's kind of a risk taker and making himself available to serious, radical, and sudden transformation, because that's kind of what happens with ayahuasca when it happens. And so are you. And so you guys need to get better at communicating when that happens, because it's not always pretty and it's not always convenient. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's very disruptive to the status quo. You guys need to get a lot better at talking about it. I'm not here to talk about like what your husband needs to do, right? Because I don't know him. But for your part, I want you to just take some time. If you need to, if you feel like your relationship is on the brink, then go talk to your husband right now. Just go say, you know what, let's take some time. I need to discuss these things with you. And remember to reassure him, okay? Because these things are really scary when your spouse just sort of goes offline in a sense. it can be really scary, and you can feel very rejected, and it can bring up all sorts of feelings that he might have from being a kid too. I mean, I don't know what his childhood was like, but you know what I mean? It brings up some of those like very fundamental insecurities or unhealed wounds or whatever. So realize that and just talk to him. If you need a little bit of time, just talk to him. But then you need to do the work, okay? You need to do the work of sitting back and saying, wow, where is this thing coming from where I'm not comfortable, I don't feel, worthy? I don't feel capable of taking up my own space and growing in, stepping in, expanding into the woman, the married, mature woman that you are from that earlier stage, more of a childlike stage where you're not allowed for whatever reason. You're not allowed. That's what you've got to figure out and fix. You've got to figure that out and then evolve through that and grow through that and let go of those old patterns, wherever those things came from. You need to let go of those things so that you can grow into your mature, strong adult self, the woman that can then go do these very risky things, that might precipitate really dramatic, sudden changes, and be able to handle that in a relationship and also just personally better, easier, with maybe less fear and less, you're already afraid of all these things and now you have to add to it, oh my God, am I going to lose my marriage, And so if you're able to step into this fullness, this adulthood, then it will be a lot easier for you, even when things are messy like this, even when things are scary and confusing like this, and things are unprecedented, because when you go through Kundalini activation, it's unprecedented, right? You're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. I have never experienced anything like this before. I don't know how to handle this. As a mature person, as a person who is comfortable owning their own experience, however weird it may be, however inconvenient to other people and to yourself the experience may be, when you can move into that state, then, you can bolster your relationship with the people who are really close to you. And it's probably more than your husband. There may be other people who are really close to you that are affected by some of these changes you're going through. Once you step into that more mature, fuller adult woman version of yourself in relationships, then you can safeguard those better, because you'll be better at communicating, you'll be better at owning your own. God, the worst is when someone you love is going through some crazy shit and they're not even owning their own space with it. That actually causes other people to feel like they need to come in and own some of that for you. Does that make sense at all? So people will kind of interject themselves in inappropriate ways, whereas if you're fully owning it, there is no space. Those people, as much as they care about you and love you, they have to stand on the periphery where they belong, right? In the exact place they belong and meet you on the same plane. But when you fall apart, first of all, because, let's just call it what it is. It's been months of just falling apart in many ways. At the same time, you don't fully own that experience and take up that space. Then that's what happens. Other people actually freak out a lot more. They feel like they need to freak out with you or for you, or, come in and interject themselves a little bit more than they would normally if you had completely owned your experience, even though it is, confusing and erratic. Think about that. Think about it like I'm in a room and I'm taking up, this is my room, I'm taking up all this space, no matter how messy it is. In this corner, there's like a dumpster fire, and over here, there's something else going on, and then for some reason, there's like a whole bunch of wild rabbits running up, over here. So this is your room, and whatever's happening in it, it's yours. And even though it's crazy and you don't feel like you have control over it, this is your room. This is all of your stuff. And so if you're like shrinking in your room, so I'm just trying to put it in different ways that you might understand better. If you shrink in your room, shrink yourself down and say, I don't know what's going on, I'm kind of falling apart, there are rabbits, there's this, there's a dumpster fire, I don't know, and you shrink into it, shrink, then other people are gonna run in that room and do stuff, right? They're gonna either do stuff or make judgments or freak out or, whatever it is. They're gonna start assessing, whatever it is. But if you're like fully owning everything, all of your energy goes out to the very, very ends of that room, the corners, everything. You're fully inhabiting that room and you're saying, yes, there's a dumpster fire. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do about that, but I'm aware of it, and I'm going to work on that. There are rabbits over here. I don't know where these rabbits came from or what they're doing, but that's okay. It's in my room, and when I need help, I will ask for help. Okay? When I need help, I'll ask for help, and then of course then you actually need to be able to do that, right? But anyway, back to the room, right? So there's all this stuff, and for you to be able to say, I'm fully inhabiting my experience in this room, I'm fully inhabiting my space, my consciousness goes out to every corner of it, I'm not turning away from any of it, I don't understand all of it, I realize how chaotic it looks, I love all of you, more than you could ever know. I love each and every one of you. I love my parents, I love my child, I love you, my husband. Bear with me. I know what this looks like. I'm going through some stuff. It'll be okay. I'm right here. I'm not going to say I've got it all under control because that's a lie, but I'm here and I'm fully conscious of everything that's going on. And you own your space. You own your experience. You own the fire. You own the rabbits. You own all of it while it's happening, because it's a process. It's not a done deal. It's not like someone walks in that room, takes a snapshot, and then holds that up as some kind of reality, because that's not what's going on. You are in process. That's really important, because at any moment you could take a snapshot and say, oh, this person's doing great. Oh, this person's, totally messed up. But you are in process. You're not this slide of one moment where everyone can just take a picture and make an assessment. Especially with something like this, the process happens really fast. This is not something that's like years and years and years and years trying to get through this difficult part. It happens really fast, and that's the part about Kundalini activation that is so terrifying and weird, and because it's not like, oh, this kind of slow opening that happens over time. Frankly, I think that would be a lot better, a lot better for everyone. But when it just activates and blows out, then you're in an accelerated process. And so if I were to come and take a picture of you at any point in time, then check back with you in 2 weeks, you would be at a different stage of that process. Own all of it and understand that at no point is it like, this is me, this is the thing, here I am. No, you're always in the process. Diane, as I promised, I wanted to get all that out first because I want you to understand how important it is. This is it, and this is like just relationship advice. It's not spiritual, it's not any of that stuff. Really, this is just relationship advice. It's saying grow up and into yourself as a woman. Own your space, communicate, express your love in the midst of everything, always, okay? And the strength of that love. Always have that tether between you and the people that you love and care about, and they will feel less anxious also if you keep that tether, even if you're going through a lot of stuff, okay? Even if you're going through a lot of stuff. If you have that strong tether, if you have good communication and you're owning your space and you're not feeling the need to constantly apologize or justify or any of that stuff, it will be easier on them and they'll be easier on you. So now down to the sexy bits, because I did say we'd get to that, and it is 20% of your problem, and therefore I'm giving it 20% of our time. So sex and Kundalini, it is different for everybody. So, you know, some people are not going to have too much of a problem with it. Some people, it will completely activate them, and that doesn't have to be in a bad way, because, you know, your particular, what you describe as Kundalini activation, it seems like kind of unpleasant, whereas a lot of people do when they have sex, they experience it not in an unpleasant way. In fact, it can be very euphoric, and I think euphoric is the best word. I was going to say blissful, but not really, because it's a little bit too hardcore. So more like euphoria, and it can be like the energy, just like two polarities, his polarity versus yours, and it can trigger a really interesting experience for you anyways. So, you know, I've written about this on my website, so I don't really necessarily want to repeat what I've already gone through. But, you know, when I was having Kundalini awakening, I tried to do everything to keep it from getting worse, even though it didn't actually have the negative impact on me that yours seems to, but it still was just overwhelming, you know, especially all the psychic activations, and having my sleep totally changed, and my eating totally changed, and, you know, basically my relationship with my body went all very odd for a while. And in a sense, I kind of went offline, like I and my body separated. They went their separate ways for a little while. And so it wasn't unpleasant. It didn't cause a whole lot of problems. It was just kind of weird at times. So when it came to sex, like you, I had no desire for sex. Like that just washed away. No desire whatsoever, but neither did I have any feeling of repulsion. It's just not something I ever thought about. It just never came to mind. Even if you were to show me something like very erotic, sex wouldn't come to mind. Like I wouldn't just look at that and think, I want sex, you know? That faculty was just completely gone. And so I was married also. You know, I didn't initiate any kind of sex, and my husband, because during this whole time I was communicating with him, you know, and owning my experience. And, you know, so I say that from experience, like, because I fully owned my experience and communicated appropriately and reassured everybody and, you know, did all these various things. People were not that upset around me. It just wasn't, you know, they weren't as anxious and fearful. And so at least I didn't have to worry about them too much. But at the same time, you know, as a married woman, I was cognizant that if I just stopped being intimate with my husband, that would obviously be hard for him. So even though I had no desire for sex at all, I made myself available for this, and I even initiated it in spite of the fact that it was like the furthest thing from my mind. And for me, it did absolutely cause a Kundalini activation. And for me, and it's going to be different for everyone, but for me, that meant that I basically it just rushed up and blew out the top of my head. I started chanting certain mantras, like involuntary, right? I made involuntary body movements and these weird contortions with my body. Completely, I was not even conscious of doing it. I was doing mantra completely involuntary, not conscious of it. And to say that I orgasmed is kind of ridiculous, because an orgasm is a very pale, pathetic thing compared to what I experienced. So it was very intense, but the thing is, it wasn't personal. So it was a very impersonal experience. I was not there, in a sense. This energy was simply it was interesting because somehow my body was using my husband's polarity energy to kind of fund this experience. And so it was like pulling it out of him and then running up and through me, but I wasn't there. So it wasn't like a fun, erotic, sexual thing between two people. It was more like a completely depersonalized experience. And it was really intense and yet confusing for my husband, because of course when your partner is having this, really intense mega orgasm, if you want to call it that, doing these, mantras and whatever, all these things are happening. It's kind of interesting, it's kind of interesting, but ultimately it's not personal at all. It's not like you and me having sex. To put it bluntly, he could have been any man, any male energy. And that doesn't feel so good. It really does not feel so good for the partner to be sort of depersonalized in that way. And of course, I didn't intend for that to happen. But I didn't let it go. So, the next morning we were taking a walk on the beach and I brought it up. And because I'm just really great that way at just communicating, right? It's like, I'm going to talk about whatever's going on. I'm not going to let it sit at all. We're going to talk about it. Even if we don't understand what's going on, we're going to talk about it, because the worst thing is to just kind of let things sit, especially when you are facing something that you've never faced before that you can't really talk about to anybody else also. It's not the typical stuff like, oh, I think my spouse is cheating on me, and you can talk to your mom or your girlfriends or, anyone, and everyone can kind of empathize with that and kind of understand that and come along with you on that ride. But for something like this, it's really just so isolating. It's already isolating because you can't really talk to your friends so much about it or the people you normally share with. And so you certainly don't want to have isolation in your relationship. So the two of you need to not be isolated from each other. I talked to him about it and I said, this is what it was like for me. This is what was happening. What was it like for you? I feel like maybe it might have felt very depersonalizing for you. Tell me what it was like for you. And knowing, because we had such a great history of communicating and we really had that established between us, he knew that he could say anything. It was a totally safe space, and that I wouldn't feel guilty. Like if he said, yeah, I felt really hurt and I felt really alone and like you weren't even there, he could say those things and I wouldn't just be like crushed and feel like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm such a bad person. He knew that it would be okay, that I could handle that and I wouldn't go off into my own weird storyland with it, that I could stand with him and stand with him in his experience, just as I'm asking him to stand with me in my experience as we fumble through life and figure stuff out. So, I opened up that dialogue immediately and we talked about it. This is the really important thing. Like for me, it activated it, but in a very different way. It didn't send me into any kind of additional tailspin the way that you describe, but it did produce this really like outsized effect in the moment in bed with my husband. So it can happen in any sort of way. And frankly, you can't really know that ahead of time. And you can't really live in fear of that. That's another thing. It's like, I would certainly not do ayahuasca again or anything like that. I wouldn't mess with my energy if I were you, okay? I would do everything that I could to normalize the energy, calm the energy down. And so, I wouldn't be doing like hardcore meditations or mantras, or I wouldn't do anything to encourage the Kundalini to happen. I wouldn't block it either, because that's a very dangerous thing to do, frankly. That energy can't be blocked. It'll just blow out. So don't try to block it, but certainly don't feed it anything. And I can't say for certain whether having sex will feed it. And I really think that part of it is like being in this kind of fear and anxiety for you. And I'm more concerned that when you have sex, you're not going to be able to relax anyways. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to relax. So I really think the best thing for you to do is to talk to him about it. And of course, this is a much bigger picture because you don't just like step into that mature adult woman person, overnight just because someone said, oh, you should do that. It takes time to grow into that, but it's something you really need to do. But you don't need to be perfect at it right away. What you need to do is just start right away and talk to your husband about it and say, these are the things that I fear, but I don't want that to stop me. I don't want that to come between us. So can we try this and go really slowly and keep this line of communication open and talk about it afterward? And it's going to be tough because if you do have some effects that are negative, it's going to scare him too. So this is a really difficult, tricky situation, and that's why both of you need to be like super mature in this and understand that you're both bringing like a lot of insecurity to it. Whereas if you could both be more secure in your marriage and understand that like, my marriage is not on the line, my marriage is going to survive this, and we're going to be stronger for this because we're going to communicate through this. We're going to reassure each other through this. We're going to find ways, no matter how like messed up we are in the moment, to overcome our first inclination, which is to withdraw, to hold back, to shrink back, or to judge, or to be afraid, or to not communicate, or whatever those first inclinations are. We're going to overcome that and grow into the next version of ourselves, because that's really what all of this is calling the two of you to do. That's what's going on. That it's a marriage between you and your husband, not your father-in-law, first of all. And the fact that you brought that up so strongly, I really want you to like examine that and say, why is this man even like prominent in this? He shouldn't be. This is like a sacred bond between you and me. And whatever life throws at us, whatever is going on, however messy it is, I will always be there. I'll always be there with this tether to you. And you always hold on to the other side of that, and we'll find our way back to each other. We'll talk our way back. We'll communicate our way back. We'll work our way through this, okay? Your relationship, your marriage shouldn't be on the line. Just think about that. It should not be so fragile that it's on the line because you can't, it's not even about withholding sex. It's that you're not communicating. You're not owning your experience and communicating up to this point. And so that's why it's become so fragile. It's become so fragile, and it doesn't need to be. But the two of you need to step into adult roles here, mature roles. And another thing about Kundalini is, okay, it's bringing on all these effects for you. You need to be really clear about getting attached to any of them. Because if you want this to calm down, you can't be, on one hand, saying, I really want this to calm down and just my life to normalize. And on the other hand, actually be kind of like fascinated with some of these things that you see or like visions you experience and things like that. You can't have it both ways. Like, you really need to focus in one direction and just stay focused that way. And it's really tricky. So you can have all these psychic things open, your third eye open, and all these things are happening. And it seems really important. It seems really dramatic and important and like, yeah, but I have these visions of these really intense things and whatever. But, there's a really fine line between letting these things move through you and saying, okay, this is what I'm experiencing in the moment. This is what I'm seeing. And then letting it go, just letting it wash through you. Or putting this big label on it, like, this is a top-down Kundalini, it's a this, it's a that, and I'm labeling it, and then I'm also kind of holding onto it, I'm clinging onto it, and there are these abilities that are opening up, and there's this stuff that I'm now able to perceive, and I'm kind of fascinated with that, okay? So if you are, then doesn't help your cause to kind of bring things down to ground level. It doesn't mean you need to reject what's happening. It's just that you need to be open and let it move through you and then let it go. Just let it go. because none of that stuff is really important. It really, like, unless you're having a vision about how to be a better wife, a more mature woman, a better mom, a better friend, what are these visions worth to you right now? What is the value of seeing like the ascent of man? And I'm not putting that stuff down. I'm just telling you they can cause you to lose your balance a little bit because you're leaning into them, and rather than staying fully centered, you're leaning into them when you need to lean back. If it happens, it happens. Learn to control it, because you can do that, and it's more than I'm going to get into in this session. But you're not just a victim. You're not just a passive thing in all this, even though if it feels that way, I totally understand. But once you get fully grounded, then you can definitely have an impact on whether those things come up, when they come up, and also sort of filter through these things. Like, basically, if it's not germane to what I'm doing right now, if it's not something I need to know right now, that nourishes my life right now, that helps my mission in life right now, I don't need to be bothered with that. I don't need to have these things just flashing in front of my face. So just take a look at any place where you're grasping onto any of that stuff, where you're leaning into any of that stuff, or being overly fascinated with any of that stuff. Just lean back. Don't resist. Just lean back, get really grounded, and figure out what your priorities are and stay focused on those. So right now, you and your husband are causing each other anxiety. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on, when in fact you need to be doubling up with each other, because something has happened and it's difficult and disruptive, and that's when you guys need to double up with each other. Normally you'd say double down, but I'm not going to say that. That doesn't apply. Double up with each other, because that's what your strength is together in life, in marriage, is that when things like this happen, inexplicable things, difficult things, because they will, and this just happens to be like weird, right? But yeah, they happen. So instead of you both being a cause of anxiety to each other on top of having to deal with what's going on, find a way to step toward each other, stand with each other, comfort each other, even though you don't know what the hell's going on, even though you're both kind of afraid and you don't know what's happening. You need to come together and make each other stronger, because right now you're dealing with the fear and anxiety of what's actually happening and losing your marriage, or you know what I mean? You can take one of those things away, and you can only do that by, you probably need to make the first step and just say, let's talk. Let's talk, and let's talk all the time. Let's talk all the time. Let's check in all the time and just be super honest with each other and check in. And if you're afraid, or you're angry, or you're resentful about what's going on, you can say that and I can handle it. And if I'm feeling some way, I can say that, and I can trust that it's a safe space, and that our relationship, and that you are strong enough to hold that, to allow me to have this kind of experience or these kind of feelings, understanding that at no point is it written in stone. Is it a snapshot? It's not. It's a process that happens day by day, and it's changing really quickly. If you work together and grow together through this, if I were to check back in with you 6 months from now, you might be in a whole different world, a much better one. I know people who have way worse problems in their married sex life than you are even going to experience with this Kundalini situation. I mean, just imagine being a 50-year-old man who's been married for 20 years, and suddenly you need to tell your wife the only way you can really get off is if you are wearing women's panties, and high heels and stuff like that. I mean, sex is difficult, and you don't need to have some weird-ass spiritual experience to have these kind of problems in your sex life. People have the weirdest things happen in their sex lives throughout their lives. Things change, their bodies change, their needs change, their hormones change. Sometimes it's Kundalini, sometimes it's something else. The main thing is you guys need to communicate better. You need to own your own space. You need to kick your father-in-law out of that space, or at least put him in his appropriate relationship to your marriage, which is something else. And you guys need to step up and open up and be strong, even in your confusion and fear, and learn to relate as two adult people.